Okay, great. So the purpose, the objective of this second session is we are going to look at community engagement. How do you engage with stakeholders for an inclusive, people-centered and locally owned community networks? And leading us for that session is Lillian Achom, who is the moderator for the next phase of the webinar. Lillian has 14 years experience in community outreach program and has also experience in establishing women-led community networks in Africa to bring internet services to rural and remote communities in East, South, West, and Northern regions of Africa. Ugandan by nationality, Lillian believes an information community technology empowered society is an opportunity for empowerment, economic growth, and better livelihoods. Especially true for women and girls in rural and remote communities in Uganda. Through AccessPlus, Lillian brings more women and girls online by teaching them the benefits of the internet and how to use the technology safely. She advocates for affordable access to connectivity in underserved communities for equal economic development. Lillian holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems from Africa University in Zimbabwe. Karibu Lillian, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Josephine, for that introduction. And thank you for leading that very kind gesture to honor our very own Chief Francis Kariuki and for getting us started with today's session. On behalf of the program committee, I once again welcome each and every one of us to this session. Thank you for joining. This session, as already shared, we shall use this session to review and discuss different methods and experiences that have been used to achieve community ownership and learn how to keep the community engaged and involved in an inclusive manner. So towards the end of the discussions, we shall have time to respond to your questions. We therefore invite you to keep engaging via the chat platforms, and but there is also a Q&A pod on which we encourage you to post your questions. Some of the panelists or all of the panelists will be able to respond to some of the questions via the Q&A pod, so you can always keep an eye to that. Yes, so today's panelists consist of representations from 3 countries. We have a representative from Zenzeleni, CN, in South Africa, and we have Kondoa, CN, in Tanzania, and Groot-Aub, CN, in Namibia. I will kick off this session by introducing each of our panelists, after which I'll invite them to briefly share with us more about their community networks and their roles that they play. So with us, we have Luca di Tena. I am not so sure whether I pronounced it right, but you could always have time to correct that. Sol is currently the acting CEO of Zenzeleni Networks, not-for-profit company, where she supports the operation and seeding of community networks in rural communities in South Africa. She also leads various projects which seek to address the digital divide in a human-centered approach and collaborates on various working groups and forums in community networks in Africa and around the world. She has over a decade of experience in strategic project management within technology development, capacity building, social impact and policy, with a focus on utilizing technologies to address environmental and social challenges. Our next speaker today is one and only Mrs. Ghillian Beverley Bock. Ghillian holds a diploma in higher education. She worked as a teacher for 27 years and served the community as member and chairperson for the Community Development Committee, CDC, for 10 years. That is in Namibia. So currently, Ghillian is the project coordinator for Groot-Aub Community Network in Namibia. We are happy to have you on the call today, Ghillian and Sol. Lastly, on the panel, we have Jabhera Matogoro, a doctor. Matogoro is an Open Internet Engineering Mozilla Fellow for the year 2019-2020, hosted by Internet Society. Presently, Matogoro is working to scale up community network, community-owned cooperative societies in Tanzania using television white space. We are happy to have you on board, Dr. Jabhera Matogoro, and we hope to hear more from you today. So starting with you, Mr. Matogoro, in just a minute, tell us about your community network in terms of location, the services you offered, the statuses. For us, is it an offline community? Is it online? Or do you have approximate number of users, plus any other information that you would feel it would be beneficial for us during this session? Thank you. Over to you, Matogoro.
Thank you so much, Lillian. As you have introduced, Jabhera Matogoro, currently working as the CEO for Tanzania Community Network Alliance. And I'll be happy to share experience on Kondoa Community Network. This was the first community network to utilize the television white space technology in Kondoa, where we connected 3 schools and 1 vocational center delivering ICT-based programs. In Kondoa, we piloted the television white space technology in UHF spectrum band, which we were able to connect the number of users, including students, teachers, and community members around these higher education institutions. The status of the Kondoa Community Network currently is off because the license for the TV white space was over, but we are now working with the government to come up with the regulation for the TV white space technology and future expansion to other locations. Kondoa Community Network is located around 140 kilometers from Dodoma City, and by drive is almost 2 hours to be there. We are proud to have Kondoa Community Network, and the members in Kondoa Community Network are benefiting internet communication, but also we are conducting digital literacy programs for community members in Kondoa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Jabhera. We wish you all the best in the struggle as you try to connect the community. Next is we want to hear from Sol to tell us more about our community network. Thank you. Welcome, Sol.
Thank you, Lillian, for the introduction. And yes, you got my name right. Thank you to the program committee and summit partners for inviting me to be part of this panel today. As mentioned, I'm here representing Zenzeleni Community Networks, which is a set of community networks that currently operates in rural South Africa. So Zenzeleni was born in the community of Mankosi through a relationship between Masibulele or JC, a community member who had personally experienced the challenges of being unconnected, and was driven to change things for his community, and his friendship with Carlos Rey Moreno, a PhD student who had previously been exposed to community networks. So we were really born from the community's struggle to access affordable, reliable connectivity. And this is in the context of South Africa, where the majority of people can only afford to buy the smallest data bundles, and they pay close to 100 times more than people who can afford monthly contracts or larger bundles. So since 2012, Zenzeleni has grown into a multi-organization model that operates in several communities, offering Wi-Fi access via 85 community hotspots accessible through uncapped monthly vouchers, and also through dedicated lines to 21 anchor tenants comprised of local businesses, NGOs, and recently, and with the support of ISOC, the district hospital. So as Zenzeleni Community Networks, we now work in two objectives. The first one is to provide affordable quality connectivity to all. And the second one is to catalyze the rural digital ecosystem, meaning developing a network that is relevant for people according to their own needs. I was going to share a slide on some facts about Zenzeleni, but maybe I can share it a little bit later when. Thank you very much. These are just for your reference. I'm going to really focus today on the human elements of the network, which are really the core of Zenzeleni community networks, and I suspect of most other networks or community networks. So I will expand more on how it all works, but to finish my introduction, as the acting CEO of the Zenzeleni not-for-profit company, my role is really to bridge the community reality with the greater telecommunications sector. And my work is to ensure that as an enabling partner, we are always guided first by the reality of the communities, by their vision and their needs, and that we support communities to have access to all the opportunities that can support and strengthen their community-based ISPs. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sol, for that. I was privileged to witness your vibrant community, and we are looking forward to hearing more about that during our next round of the session. Next on the panel is Ghillian. Ghillian, I invite you to tell us more briefly about Groot-Aub Community Network. Thank you.
I'm struggling. Okay, sorry, Lillian, and thank you. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is, as introduced, Ghillian Beverley Bock. I am the coordinator of the Groot-Aub Community Network, and it is a Namibian-based network. We are situated like in 50 kilometers from the capital, Windhoek. It's like in half an hour's drive, and that is to the southern part of the capital. The network is in its starting phase and having only 3 towers and serving around about 70 households. That is like in for us 4 people per household, which give you approximately 280 people, mostly school children from the local schools, and then women who stays at home. Our main purpose is to connect the community via intranet, because we have a big problem of communication in between the community members, and also have a little bit of internet this stage. We are supposed to have internet like in 6 months from now, but because we had a one node that was an internet node, we are at the stage using that one node to sort of give internet connection as well. It is, however, slow. We are now in a consultation phase with our local authority to apply from the local ISP for faster internet packages so that we can serve the community in that way as well. Right, being the baby in science, we don't have a lot like Sol and Matogoro, but yes, I think next year, this time, we won't be the babies. Then there will be another babies. So yes, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ghillian. I I was so honored to work with you in establishing that community network. And it is your commitment that has seen, and that with the support from the rest of the team, that is how we were able to see that the network is up and running. So thank you so much, everyone, the panelists, for that great introduction, for setting us, giving us the picture of what your community networks are like. I would like to use our next part of the discussion to dive a little more into details. And I would love to start with you, Sol. From my previous, we have many community networks mushrooming across the African continent, at the moment. However, when I read a recent study publication from Internet Society, it shows that up to 12 community networks, up to 12 of 37 community networks in Africa became inactive. While the 25, out of the 25 that were considered active, many were actually partially active. So Zenzeleni, to me, is one of the existing community networks thriving on a very strong network of communities involved in different activities. We would really want to me, that shows that for the effective engagement of communities, is critical for any success of the community network. So on behalf of everyone and who would love to start up a community network, those who are listening and they would love maybe to do something new, could you please share with us, why is the community at the center of establishing community networks? Are there any other stakeholders involved? And what are their roles? Over to you, Sol.
Thank you, Lillian. What great questions. And my first response is really to look at, why are we doing this? Why do we need people to be connected, and to what end? So for me, the imperative is to create equal access to services and opportunities, which in this digitalized world and in this fourth industrial revolution require almost all of us to be able to utilize ICTs in one way or another. And the price of not having this access is greater inequality. So for me, that is the drive behind connecting the unconnected. So and community networks, again, fill this gap, which is experienced by the community networks in reaching that greater digital equity. So just using my experience in Zenzeleni and in engaging with other community networks in the continent, I would venture to say that in most communities where there is a lack of connectivity or affordability, there's also no reliable power. Few people have access to ICT devices and skills, and the knowledge to use ICTs to create agency and opportunities that make sense to their lives. Over and above that, many of these communities also deal with very harsh social and economic realities. So at the same time, you have the telecoms technology, the regulatory frameworks, the business models and compliance, and much of the internet, ICT devices and apps are kitted to urban settings and mid to high income users. And much of these are tailored to primarily English speakers. So in this context, for me, the digital divide is also a divide of lived realities in many of these communities. I'm sure I mean, we have all sorts of communities, but I'm focusing on that, and that is where the focus of Zenzeleni is, right? So there's the reality of the community and the reality of the standard telco or ICT world. So back to your question of why the community at the center. So in Zenzeleni, we work from a premise that the network should catalyze agency and reflect people's values. It is only the community that can determine this. Not me or anybody from an external sort of environment. So in this sense, our model grows from people's aspirations and can't assume that it must fit a top-down predetermined shape or form. In addition, it is a community member that understands its ICT and structural challenges best. And we can only bridge the digital and reality divide by sort of holistically addressing all these barriers that stand in the way for people to access the opportunities that the network and the internet have a potential to offer, or that's driving us, right? And now in this, each community is unique and has a different set of challenges. In my opinion, what makes a community network so effective as a movement, as a concept, is that it adapts to people instead of expecting people in a very different reality to adapt or adopt the tool that may not be relevant for their context. And then expanding on the other part of the question of who are the stakeholders, right? So I'm sure each community and each country has very different key stakeholders. So I will speak in general terms and sort of share some of Zenzeleni's structure to illustrate it. So we have established the community is a key stakeholder. It's the heart. And note that the community is not a homogeneous group. It is not static. It changes. It can be very complex. But for this, let's call that the community stakeholder group, right? A community network will then have to interact with the greater telecommunications sector to access bandwidth, to source equipment, for technical best practices. On the compliance side, the community network will need to interact with public and private organisms to ensure that operations are compliant, right? I would just call this group of public and private organizations the formal telecoms stakeholder group. So something to see here is that this formal stakeholder group or formal telecoms is necessary and very established. They are driven by top-down directives, and their success is measured by profit margins. And that leaves people's needs quite far down the priority list. So in this position, you know, that they are in polar opposites, telecoms to communities. So in this tension is where what led Zenzeleni to develop a third stakeholder or stakeholder group, which is that bridge between community design and the telco world. In our case, in Zenzeleni, this is played by the Zenzeleni not-for-profit company, which is governed by several partners, which also play this role, which is the Zenzeleni cooperatives, the University of the Western Cape in our case, Ellipsis Regulatory Solutions, which are regulatory experts, and the Association for Progressive Communications. So briefly, just to give a sense of how this works in our case, Zenzeleni Community Networks is the name we give to the collective of what is currently 3 organizations. We have the 2 community-owned and governed ISPs or Internet Service Provider Cooperatives. These are currently in the Mankosi community and the Zitulele community. And each of those have several villages. And then the third company is the Zenzeleni not-for-profit company. So the cooperative's role is that they are the owners of the community network, meaning infrastructure and business. They determine the services that the network offers and at what price, who's responsible for the nodes, how the income is allocated, and any community-based decisions. The cooperatives are, in our case, are elected by the community and their tribal authority or their traditional authority, And they usually represent people that are respected in each of the villages that make up this community. The third organization, the Zenzeleni Not-for-Profit, or NPC, we act, as I mentioned, enabler and bridger. So this typically entails partnering with experts, advising and supporting the local cooperatives to meet the regulatory requirements, offer technological support and business mentorship. This often entails harmonizing formal economy to informal economies, building capacity, providing information for cooperatives to make more informed decisions within sector standards and best practices. And another role that the NPC takes on, and which Zenzeleni at first didn't conceive of, was that of combining common services and assets. So this is a core component of reaching affordable connectivity, is that we're able to buy bulk bandwidth and equipment and create efficiencies that are otherwise not possible for each cooperative to do on its own, or it's very expensive for each cooperative to do on its own. But I must note, what the NPC does not do is determine what the cooperatives do, how they do it, and what they envision for their network. So as the acting CEO of the Zenzeleni Not-for-Profit, my role is really to ensure that we are always guided first by the reality of the communities, and that at the same time we can support communities to have access to all the opportunities that they need to strengthen their community-based ISPs. So in speaking of successes in community networks in Africa, I think a successful community network constantly adapts to the realities of the community. It's not top-down or predetermined model that can be imposed. It's a model that adapts to people and the people that it serves. And as the people and community and the environment evolve, so the community network should evolve. I think it's also very, very important for community networks to understand and have a good partnership or route to the telecommunications sector in the country. So that's where the partners come in. I think I'll stop there and answer more questions if they arise.
Thank you so much, Sol, for that detailed insights. I'm sure we shall be coming back to you again because there will be some questions here and there. What I pick though is that from what you've shared is that it is really community ownership is a non-negotiable starting point for a viable community network. And this is something that anybody that would love to start up a community network should really consider it seriously. So our next guest on the panel is Mr. Matogoro. Mr. Matogoro, one of the challenges that we faced when we were establishing a community network in North Africa, specifically in Morocco, was the poor reception of the idea, because the whole concept of community network was really new to the people. So it was a bit of a struggle at the beginning. You have led the establishment of community networks using TV white space technology in Tanzania. Would like to know what are some of the complexities of introducing an innovation like internet to a community that finds technology or internet something totally new, or they don't really have the skills, and how can we overcome such a scenario? Thank you. Over to you, Matogoro.
Yeah, thank you, Lillian, for a wonderful and good question. To start answering the question, I grew up in a village called Nyamerambaro in Tarime. And in those days, when maybe a radio or a bicycle got a challenge, or electricity, solar, there are always people who never went to school, but were able to fix the radio or the solar or the bicycle. So when I started my engagement with Kondoa, the first point was the community themselves to identify people within the community who are able to do a number of activities. And the first group, I found a guy called Fabian. And Fabian was very known in Kondoa as someone, a technician for DSTV installation, DSTV disc installation. So when I approached Fabian, you can imagine with my master's and as a PhD student at that time, I never had experience of climbing the tower. But you can imagine Fabian, just a Form 4 river, staying in Kondoa, has an experience of a DSTV dish installation, was able to climb to 30-meter tower and do installation for the equipment. So within the community, there are people who are able to do all these technicals. And as Soy mentioned, you don't need to have a PhD to do antenna installation or to do access or Wi-Fi configuration. Because these are, in most cases, are routine work which anyone can master within a short time or period. Maybe I have also seen a number of questions in the QA chat room asking on the technical experience on the television white space technology. I know I should not make this session a more technical for telecom engineers, but from your question, Lillian, let me a little bit elaborate on the spectrum band. Those days before the FM radio, we used to have AM radio. You know, AM radio covers a very larger geographical area. But FM radio has got a very strong signal, also can cover a large geographical area, but it's not compared to AM radio. If you go to basics on telecommunication engineering, specifically on radio frequencies, for example, most of us, we are aware on the Wi-Fi technology, which operates on 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz. We also have experience on mobile technology, which operates in 900 for GSM or 1800 GSM. So general, I can say that in the spectrum band, we can have two main groups. The first group is what we call lower frequencies. And the second group is what we call higher frequencies. As I mentioned, the Wi-Fi we use for 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz, and the mobile technology, for example, 3G, 4G, which is based on 1800 or something like that, we can say these fall under higher frequencies. So comparing in terms of coverage, higher frequencies have a very good signal, but are weaker on propagation characteristics. When you compare to raw frequencies, like the one we use, maybe on top of that, I say Africa, the ITU is the global organization harmonizing the spectrum usage. And down to ITU, there are raw other organizations. For example, we have local regulatory organization or authorities. For example, in Tanzania, we have Tanzania Communication Regulatory Authorities. So for example, after the migration from analog to digital terrestrial television in Tanzania, digital terrestrial television transmits in 470 to 694 megahertz. And this falls under lower frequencies in the spectrum band. So spectrum band in lower frequencies has got a very strong propagation characteristics compared to higher frequencies. So why I say strong propagation characteristics is that it's because it can penetrate walls, it can penetrate mountains, it can penetrate trees, but be caution. It also depends on how many obstacles are there, because from the basic experience on telecommunication, any signal can be affected by obstruction, refraction, refraction. But comparing in terms of technical experience or technical propagation characteristics, lower frequencies has got higher and strong propagation characteristics compared to higher frequencies. So coming from to your question on your experience in Morocco and other community-owned network you were establishing, probably you were using the higher frequencies based on 2.4 gigahertz or 5.8 gigahertz. As I have said, higher frequencies has got good signal, but less propagation characteristics compared to lower frequencies. But from my experience working with TV white space for around 6 years, I have found that TV white space technology has got its own unique characteristics in terms of strong propagation power. It can penetrate trees. If you find time, maybe few years to come, you can visit us. We were able to connect 3 education institutions, and between one of those locations, there was a very big forest serving as a source of water for Kondoa community. But because of the strong propagation characteristics of the television white space technology, we were able to penetrate those forests and establish the link to boost teachers' courage. If you are using the higher frequencies based on 2.4 or 5.8, you may need to have a repeater to go through those obstacles. So I have said that this technology is very good. And Kondoa Community Network was the first community network to utilize television white space technology. I really appreciate and thank Internet Society for their grants, the University of Dodoma, which sponsored the equipment for this community, and we are now having 4 more communities in Tanzania which are taking advantage of this technology to bridge the digital divide. Thank you, Lillian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Matogoro, for that, for all that you've shared with us. We encourage you to also keep responding to some of the questions that I see being sent to you. As we move on to our next speaker, that is Ghillian. Ghillian, as we said, is representing one of the newest community networks in the movement, and that is Groot-Aub, which was started. What I learned is that Groot-Aub was started as a 1-month research project by a final year student. That is about 4 to probably 6 years ago. It later experienced a little bit of a downtime due to various factors up until recently when it finally picked up. So today, as we heard from Ghillian earlier on, Groot-Aub has about 3 masts erected and serving the community at a distance of 1 kilometer apart. So from your experience way back in 2014, Ghillian, could you please share with us what have been the lessons, from that time? What did you do right? What hadn't you done previously that you had to do this time to enable the network up? What have been the challenges and strategies, that supported the network?
Thank you, Lillian. I think by answer, or maybe I must go through how our work. From the start, I started in 2018, which means that, as you said, it was a one note. And this was just to help learners from the local high school with information in order to maybe complete school projects. This was a 4th-year student final work for his 4th year. So, like as you said, as from 2014 up to 2018, it was up and down. So in 2018, we lent ourselves through US aid through FCHICS, sort of, yes, it was like in funding. But this was like in for women, to give women from the rural countries or rural areas a sort of boost and help them to get at a place where they can all support themselves or have a little better living standard or maybe a little more income. So yes, as I said, it was like in a one note in 2014, but up in 2020, because of working and walking with this community, we now can have at least these 3 towers and with 2 to be set up in the next few months. Now, yes, let us look at the challenges that we had and the solutions for these challenges. Our biggest challenge when we start way back in 2018 was the lack of communication and involvement, and also the awareness of the project. Because for the one note, it was just like in maybe a person living next to the student that knew about the project or what he was busy with. And yes, now we had to go to the whole of the community and yes, bring this to the community. So we start with groundwork. We inform as many of the inhabitants as possible by going from door to door. If we look at Groot-Aub itself, it has more or less like in 10,000 inhabitants. Yes, with a 2.5 to 4.5 square kilometer. So we did groundwork. We walked from house to house, and then we had in that stage, and which I am very lucky or that I had her, was the founder and initiator of the project, which was also the professor in that stage for the one note. And that was Prof. Nick Betwell. So she was the one that found and initiated the project. So we work hand in hand. Her part for this was to sort of do research to see how far the community is with the usage of technology, and also what the community needed and what was the shortcomings. That was from her side. and we will always be glad for what she did and cherish what she did in this community. Yes, then the other one was the lack of connectivity. The community was not connected, and to do this, we had to give flyers from house to house. We sort of print a lot of flyers, and then we distribute, give it to school children, give it to the members of community, to give it to the other parts that we did not reach. Right, and then from there on, we sort of, because I was known to the community, I mean, I was born here, I was raised here, I worked like in 27 years as a teacher, so I knew the community like in one hand, and we initially identified 9 living areas, and we divide it accordingly. And then we go to each of these areas, like give a prior notice of a week, so that we will come by and hold some meetings just to bring awareness of the project to the community. And that is how we sort of get the project out there, so that people knew about the project, so that people knew what we were busy with and how best or how this can help them. These meetings proved very useful because for us, we have like in Namibia, we have 13 ethnic groups, but in Groot-Aub, we have like in 4. We have Oshibambu, Pastor Nama, and then the Herero tribe. So for us doing this meetings in the different locations, because people have a tendency that certain people live in certain sections, or let me say certain tribes live in certain sections. So with this going from section to section, we could include everybody. Okay, not everybody came on board the first time. It was only those early adopters that joined. And then most of the people wanted to see something happening before they joined. So that was some of the challenges that we had and how we overcome them. Then we must also see Groot-Aub, the second phase, not the one note. The network as such, as in itself, was a women's empowerment funding that we get from AccessPlus. So when I entered the project, there was no woman. It was like in the student and a few of the team members that was handling the project. So when I came back from Uganda, and that was my best experience that I had with the whole project. It was also where I met the chief. Yes, may his soul rest in peace. So yes, when I came back, I had to now bring women together and establish women's groups. And from these women's groups, we now had to get women that will be able, as when the project or when the funders withdraw and the funders are done with us, those women now must lead the project. So yes, luckily we managed to establish these working women groups. We register these women as members of the CN, and out of their midst, we elect a board that now will deal with the day-to-day running of the network. As I said, when I mentioned Prof. Nicola, Prof. Petuel, we had a few partners that walk this road with us. After the women's groups, we go into what we called end user training. Now, end user training was to now get the community members to start such a stage where they can use, whether it is a slim phone, a laptop, or a tablet, to connect to the community network, get info from there, put info up if they wish to. Yes, that was what we needed to do. And we had a local Namibian company who partnered with us, Y-Free Solutions. Yes, I also want to thank them because they went out of their way to help us out. Under their leadership, we trained at least 80 women, 80 plus, yes, because we had TNTs as well in how to use available technology to access the network, to get relevant information and also to share this information. The same Y-Free solution together with ISOC Namibia also assist us in providing training for the locals on how to set up a solar panel and how to use it. I mean, we must bear in mind that Namibia, when it comes to technology, it's a little bit not that up there yet. We are going there, but yes, in the community where I was born and raised, we have like in 5 to 10 male technicians and a very few females. So then Y-Free and ISOC helped out with that training. And then we had another Namibian-based company, SMEs Compete, which helped with business training and also how to register these businesses. This was just to get the women up and at the stage where if they want to put up businesses, they will be able to do it. And then the last one, and maybe our biggest challenge, was to apply for a license. Other than the other 3 countries that was involved in this project, we had to have a license from the authorities in order to put up our CN. So we applied. The first one, or first of the needs that we had to have was an NGO, a registered NGO, and we were not registered. I mean, at that stage, we did not have the money to register the network as an NGO. So there came in another Namibian NGO, a registered one from the community called Vibrant Community Network under the leading of Bennett Narip. So they helped us out and we could register under their network. Oh yes, it was also a sort of a network. So we registered with the Namibian Communications Authority. It took us 7 months to get the license. And yes, in that stage we was like in stagnant. Nothing happened. We was just waiting because we could do nothing unless we had that license. So in March this year, the license was granted and immediately we started. As I said, we was funded by USAID through the AccessPlus program. So they sent us the funding, and because the funding was not that much, we could not use one of these big companies to put up our towers. We did not have enough funding, so we go with the locals. One of the local guys built the towers and used the community youth to erect these towers. We did not have cranes, we did not have this special equipment. I mean, it's a 12-meter high tower that we talk about, and these guys had to put them together themselves to pick it up and put it where it is needed. But at the end of the day, the towers was erected, it was put up, it was standing, yes, and now we had to put up the equipment. ISOC Namibia was the ones that sponsored or that give a grant for the equipment, yes, and we also want to thank them. The towers were erected during a period of national lockdown that was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in a very minimal community participation. As I said, it was only the welder and a few of the youth members that built and put up the towers. Okay, as I said, the main mast is like in there is a 1 kilometer radius, which provides intranet as well as internet, although it's very slow, to the community members in the immediate vicinity. The network is still 3 months old and still growing. We still have to put up 2 more towers in order to provide at least coverage for 90% of the inhabitants. But because the community is aware of the positive impact of the networks towards the improvement of their living standards, they are willing to give everything it takes to make it a success. In conclusion, let me then thank the presenters of this event who present me with a platform to make the Groot-Aub Community Network known to a group of other networks out there, with the hope that we can assist each other in order to strengthen community networks all over the globe and let them be the voice of especially rural communities. Thank you to those individuals and companies who partnered with us and helped with the establishment of the Groot-Aub Community Network. I thank you and be blessed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ghillian, for that very elaborate presentation. What I pick is there has been a lot of, you had to go through a lot of capacity building, convincing the community to buy into the idea. And that to me seemed to be what stood out and what made the progress to date. We wish you all the best as you continue to connect the other remaining communities. And we look forward to hearing more about your progress. We are now quickly moving on to our next phase of the session, and that is the Q&A session. We encourage, because of time, in the interest of time, we shall mainly prioritize the questions that have been posted on the Q&A section. So we encourage you to post your questions there. And if we still have time, we shall get back to ask you guys to raise your hands and then speak. So I will start off by a question, reading out a question to Saul. I'll start with Saul. One of the questions that says, it's to do with financial. I think I saw somewhere to do with financial. Just a minute. Yeah, it says, that is by Joseph, Mr. Joseph. He says, where does the funding for community networks come from? And how do you create the community networks initiative? Now, so as you respond to that, maybe you would be able to, in just under a minute, share with us some of the complexities that you experience, when you are taking such technology to a community that is not tech savvy. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Lillian. I don't know if I can do everything in 1 minute, but please note that I have answered some of those questions on the Q&A. So where does funding come from for a community network? I want to just share that we've run, apart from supporting the 2 Zenzeleni cooperatives that I mentioned, we've also run a mentorship with another 5 communities and developed some economic projections. In all cases, what was a reality is that in underserviced communities, meaning underserviced with connectivity and probably many other core services, and where people have, critical economic needs, it's not feasible for community networks to provide their own capex. Now, that is not the case in some other parts of the world. So I want to highlight that as in terms of creating, a fund, and that's what the work we do. We source funding to establish the seed community network that seed should then generate income. Again, because people cannot rely on alternative income streams to maintain the network or grow it. They need to actually, well, in our case, I guess, speaking for myself, it's best to have a model that you're selling some services, even if it is at minimal cost, so that it is affordable to all, so that you can then, with that seed, grow and sustain the network based on your income. And that is where the Zenzeleni cooperatives are at the moment. With regards to the Zenzeleni not-for-profit company, I would say that the shared services, the part of the work that we do that is shared services, so that's very much operational support for the community networks, that is starting to be sustainable again from, or partly sustainable from income. And in future, that's where we should go. One of the things there is that, you know, those shared services create more efficiencies as it provides for more cooperatives. So I think that, you know, when we're in a stage, it depends about, let's say, a few more other community-based cooperatives that all decide to share services, then they together can maintain that from their income. Now we do other work, which is the policy advocacy. Absolutely, that's a massive hurdle. I think John Dada has mentioned it. A few other colleagues in the chat have mentioned it. It's necessary. You know, I commend the Uganda regulator, I believe, for making huge strides in recognizing community networks. But I think in most other countries that still needs to be achieved. And so that kind of advocacy, the training and capacity building, things like, for example, we are establishing an ICT hub now. All those things come from project funding or volunteer work, which we have all done extensively, and from partnerships with in-kind contributions. I hope I've answered that question. I think my time is up.
Thank you, Sol. Yes, you've responded to that question, and it also helped to answer another question still directed to you, still on finances, which I saw you had also responded to. So the next question from the Q&A is that is from Twahir. He wants to know, so in essence, what is actually coming through is that success of CNs needs to be group driven? That's a question. Does anyone on the panel want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can go for it.
All right, very briefly, Mr. Matogoro, thank you.
Yeah, as we have mentioned, the strength of a community network require community involvement. It should not be a one-man show. That's why we strongly call for all community members, special groups, women, people with disabilities, all these elders should be engaged to make it sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Matogoro, for that very brief response. Now, still back to you, there is a question that this person would like to know. That is Mr. Mohammed Kamara says, Mr. Matogoro, are you saying higher the frequency, lower and weaker it become and lower? Okay. It says, Mr. Matogoro, are you saying the higher the frequency, the lower and weaker it becomes, and the lower the frequency, the higher it becomes in service? For instance, in the case of VHF and HV frequency. Yeah, this is quite technical, but I'm not too sure if you can respond in a layman's language and very brief in under 1 minute. Over to you, Matogoro.
Thank you, Lillian. I would also request a show up on the slide from your end so that I can combine these two questions, because there was also another question asking on the architecture, which I shared on your end. So yes, as I have said, the higher the frequency, the smaller the coverage shaded radius, and the lower the frequency, the larger the coverage shaded radius, and the stronger the propagation features. On the side of the architecture, you can see we have a tower with 3 sector antenna covering 120 degree. And the sector antenna are transmitting in UHF to schools which are using the Yagi-Uda antenna. And at the school, we have the CPE, the customer premises equipment. And from the CPE, we have the normal Wi-Fi access point. And users get internet access using the normal Wi-Fi technology. Next slide, please. Yes, for the current status of community network in Tanzania, you can see we started with Kondoa Community Network, Cooperative Society, and out of it, Kondoa Community Network has yielded 4 more children. We have Tarime Community Network Cooperative Society Limited. We have Kasuru Community Network Cooperative Society Limited. We also have Mpimbwe Community Network Cooperative Society Limited and Nyasa Community Network Cooperative Society Limited. This was only possible with the support from Internet Society, Mozilla Foundation, and many other partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matogoro, for responding to that. We are still on the Q&A session, and we are just 10 minutes away to closure of our session today. That is just for our information. We shall continue to respond to a few questions, and for the questions that we shall have failed to respond due to time, we shall proceed with the discussions on the community network mailing list. So the next question is to Ghillian. Ghillian, please, do you have a website or some references where we can get information from Groot-Aub, especially the Working Women Group? That is from Jean Louis. Jean Louis is also one of our PC members from Cameroon. Thank you.
Lillian, yes, I tried, I'm struggling with my video, sorry. I type an answer. For now, we don't have a website. I provide an email address, so we may.
Okay, we probably lost Ghillian along the way, but we shall get that information and inform us about and share with us on the group. So we shall carry on with the question, with other questions as Ghillian probably tries to get back online. Yes, the next question is for anyone anybody who has a response to it. It's to do with, it's a Kenyan for the Kenyan Community Project. Where can we get more information on the Kenya Community Project initiative initiated by the chief? It was actually implemented by chief. I could respond to that. You can visit the website of AFCHICS, that is afchicks.org. I've typed it on the chat room. Yeah. So I've typed it on the chat room. You can, yes, so you can access that. I think Ghillian is back. We can give her the opportunity to respond to that as she was halfway on the question. Ghillian, are you present?
Yes, Lillian, I'm back. I type an answer in the Q and answer box. We do not have a website yet, but I shared an email. So, I mean, feel free to contact me and we can work something out as from there. And then, yes, share information.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Ghillian. Yes, so maybe we can give one person to respond, to ask a question on voice. The person that is raising their hands, I don't know who it is, but someone is raising their hand. That is Masin.
I have already asked my question in the Q&A, and I got the answer, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry to have missed most of the conversation. And is there going to, so I have a question, is there going to be like a follow-up email with the recording so that I can listen to this from an archive? Thank you.
Yes, there will be a recording that will be sent out. The recording is going to be sent out to whoever registered for you to listen at any one point. Thank you. Yes, so that is all that we have. Our next question is, that is from Herman. Herman says, in fact, community networks can accelerate the maturity of the local economy. What are the innovative solutions? That is the products, innovation, startups that were development in these communities. Anyone on the panel that would like to respond to that? Thank you.
Yes, Lillian, thank you. I can speak on that. Maybe from my experience from Kondoa Community Network, we found that having a connectivity is one thing, but having content out of it is another thing. So one of the innovation that we spearheaded is the local community to develop their own content because, yeah, thank you, to shorten it.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, so there always has to be a reason. My understanding is there always has to be a reason why the community will have to come back to use the network. So innovations, it could be just a website, a business website where you can upload the products of the community. Those are some of the things that you could think of to support the community and to, yes, to act as a reason for the existence of the community network and why it should go on. Sol, you have a question by Twahir who says, I understand that Zenzeleni works as a cooperative. How did you pull this through? Yeah, how did you pull this through? I know, yes, someone wants to hear more about it, even if you had shared a little already about it. So over to you, Sol.
Thanks. I wonder if Tahir could just expand on that question. So I'm just not sure. I'm very happy to share. I just don't know exactly what, if you want me to expand more on why there are cooperatives, or if it's understood that Zenzeleni is made up of 3 companies, which are 2 cooperatives that each operate in a community, and then there's the not-for-profit that supports both of them. So maybe if he could expand some more, I would be guided as to what to answer. But maybe while he does that, and if he could type, I can expand on the relationship between the legal vehicle. So meaning if you go for a cooperative, or if you go for a not-for-profit company, or if you are under the banner of a PTY Limited, or all those do have a relationship, in my experience, of how you can access certain license or license exemptions. So while there may not be licensing specifically for community networks, there may be licenses that you can reinterpret depending on what legal structure or vehicle you choose for the community network. And I think that is not often looked at as a critical factor, but if you don't have a license, you can't operate legally. And in choosing your vehicle and business structure, even in choosing your focus, so certain countries have, a focus in rural development or in social enterprises. If you can catalyze on those kind of avenues that are not strictly technological solutions, but definitely impact your community network and your technology solutions hugely, I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. So I don't know if that answers Tahir's question, but something to think about.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've actually run out of time. I just missed to see that. But for the questions that have not been responded to, I think we've tried to respond to majority of the questions. Those that are not yet responded to, we shall carry on to the next, onto the chat groups and mailing lists. So to the panelists, in just, we're already out of time, but in just 30 seconds, just give your last remarks. Starting with you, Sol. Thank you.
Gosh, I was typing and... So last remarks, I just want to express my appreciation to the organizers, and especially to the Internet Society and to the Association for Progressive Communications. I think they've played a really important role in supporting us and the community networks movement through this summit and through many other activities. And the summit has created this incredible meeting place and for seeding ideas. And we've just seen how it's grown over the years. So thank you so much. And I also want to commend the organizers for, adapting to the times and going online, and especially for providing live interpretation for the Francophone African countries, because I know that that's been a big ask from the program committee for the summit, and it's finally been realized. So merci, thank you, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sol. I invite Matogoro in 30 seconds, please give us your last remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian, and the summit organizers. Community network is the only feasible approach to connect the unconnected population. If we rely on the traditional connectivity structure, it will take us another 50 years to bring the unconnected online. One more recommendation, we still have two main challenges, which I normally call them 2P, policies and people, but soon we will be there. Asanteni-san.
Thank you, Matogoro. I welcome you, Ghillian. Tell us in just less than 30 seconds, give us your remarks. Thank you.
Lillian, let me thank the organizers, my fellow panelists. It was, it was my first, and it was really good. What I want to say is, yes, might this be not the start somewhere up there for the community networks to just grow and serve communities and give voice to other communities, and let's pull in those that are not part of us yet, and let's help each other. I mean, we have community networks that are already that have strength. We have those that are still growing. So yes, there is a platform where we can go and just see how much or how best we can help each other. Let's we not be each one in our own corners, but let's get to the stage where we can assist each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. It has been a great session with so much to learn, so much to share. And now I would like to hand over the mic to Josephine Miliza to close the session. Josephine, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lillian, for the great moderation. It has indeed been a very engaging and informative session. To add on to just like what Ghillian said around let's support each other to build the movement. And from the presentations of what the panelists have shared, it really takes a village to grow and sustain a community network. So we will have our next session will be on 25th November, and the title will is Public Funding for Community Networks, and it builds onto the conversation today around how do community networks get funded, what are some of the ways that they have been funded before, mostly has been through grants or well-wishers, which we can say private, but now we'd like to look at the avenues through which community networks can be supported through public funding. So thank you very much to our panelists today, Sol, Matogoro, and Ghillian. I would also like to thank you, Lillian, who is both part of the PC as well as has been a very great moderator today. We were not able to address all the questions, but we will aim to have the panelists respond to them on email. So looking forward to seeing you again on 25th November for our next webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Asanteni sana. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.